baseball season has the LA Dodgers as a surprise to absolutely nobody, winning the World Series for the second time in as many years. How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy again, breaking down all the latest here at Mets and MLB land, because tonight we're not only going to live react to the LA Dodgers winning back-to-back World Series, but ultimately what Steve Cohen and David Stearns can continue to learn from both the Toronto Blue Jays and the LA Dodgers after seeing what was a masterclass of a World Series. Let me make something abundantly clear. I am gutted for Toronto Blue Jays fans. I'm gutted for my guy Jim at Ballcap Sports. I'm gutted for my friends Adam and Nick there at the Blue Jays Today YouTube channel. I'm gutted for all my friends here in Toronto, but at the same time, to all my friends that are Dodger fans, congratulations to each and every one of them. I hope the Dodger winning does not continue as a Mets fan, but I understand there's a great reality that this is just the start of this continued dynasty for LA, and that's why I don't want to waste any time in today's discussion. We're going to live react here to the key moments from this World Series, which was nothing short of jaw-droppingly tremendous. Do not get it twisted. A fantastic World Series by all accounts. It had everything that you could possibly want, from the defense to the offense to the dramatics to everything in between. It was unbelievably entertaining. It was such good baseball to watch. I would have loved to see Toronto win it. That did not happen. The best team prevailed yet again, everybody, and that is, of course, going to be the LA Dodgers. I don't think anyone is sitting here surprised by this, but rather kind of shocked that it took 7 games and took this kind of manner for it to, in fact, come to fruition. And now it begs the question, how are teams going to evaluate themselves heading in this offseason, as the LA Dodgers, who have spent more money than any other team in baseball the past couple seasons, who have also absolutely moved the needle in more ways than one, and I say spend more money than anyone else with the exception of Steve Cohen and our beloved Mets here, but let's call it how it is. When you sign Shohei Ohtani to $700+ million, when you sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto to $325+ million, and when you add everyone else in company that they have done over the past couple of years, this is what's cultivated the big bad Dodgers to being as dominant as they are. This is what happens when you can throw out not one, not two, not three, but multiple aces in one singular game there in Game 7. Yoshinobu Yamamoto goes north of 100 yesterday when looking at the pitch count, and he's out there pitching a day later. This is what separates good teams from great teams, is having the guys that can help you in more ways than one. Yamamoto was the stopper this year's playoff for the Dodgers yet again. He was nothing short of amazing. A greater run than what he had last year, in my opinion. Shohei Ohtani was susceptible here in this Game 7, and it still did not matter. Bo Bichette with potentially his last home run as a Toronto Blue Jay. He got all of that one. It was a magical moment, but it was not enough. You cannot give any type of leash to an LA Dodgers club, because they're going to run with whatever they have possible. They know what it takes to win. They have been here time and time again. No one, and I mean absolutely no one, should be surprised by the LA Dodgers now winning back-to-back World Series. Can you be frustrated by this as a Mets fan? Absolutely you can be frustrated by this. Could you have the reaction to say to yourself, oh my God, there's no way, there's no chance in hell that a team like our beloved New York Mets can get past, can somehow, someway slay this Dodger dragon that no one has been able to do so over the past calendar year. And I don't blame anyone on the planet for feeling that way today, but at the same time, we are here to break down not only the Dodgers' greatness and what is clearly a dynasty in the making, but ultimately how the New York Mets can combat this, because there are a couple ways that they can go about their approach this offseason to make sure that it's at minimum not for a lack of effort. And that is what an absolutely pissed off Steve Cohen is inevitably going to do here for this Mets team, whether you guys like it or not, to everybody watching live on a replay. So thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Let me know all your initial reactions, thoughts, and analysis to everything that transpired. Not only your immediate reactions to the World Series just concluding as the LA Dodgers are taking home gold in back-to-back years, but ultimately how this impacts the landscape not only for LA's offseason, but for everybody's offseason, including our New York Mets here on the WardyNYM platform. For those that don't know, how you doing? My name is Tyler. I cover the New York Mets for a living every single day here on WardyNYM to over 35,000 strong subscribers, as well as I'm a recurring contributor there for the Bleacher Report app, where I cover MLB-wide topics, as well as is the case with the New York Post Sports and their YouTube channel, covering mainly the New York Mets, among other miscellaneous topics. And tonight, everybody, not only did the LA Dodgers secure this full comeback 5-4 in the 11th inning, where, as a surprise to nobody too, and I'm going to keep saying this, the lawn ball reigns supreme, everybody. I am sick and tired of the constant comments that I get from followers of mine or people on X saying that, oh, home runs don't mean everything. Because here's the thing, they don't mean everything in theory, but they mean everything in actuality. Let me know the last time a team that did not hit more home runs than the other team had themselves a deeper playoff run. It typically doesn't happen. You need the lawn ball in order to have success. So what did we see relevant yet again today? It was a Bo Bichette 3-run bomb, and then it was multiple bombs chipping away as this Dodgers squad. It's a 9th inning bomb by the Miami Marlin legend, now turned LA Dodger here, that we saw in this matchup, Mr. Yes, you guessed it, everybody, Miggy Rojas. And then you, of course, get Will Smith, not the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We're talking about the one here, strictly in LA, being the stopper there in extras. Lawn ball yet again reigns supreme, everybody. And that is something that our New York Mets did plenty of this past calendar season. But the reason why they did not make postseason is because, unlike the LA Dodgers, the New York Mets did not have a clutch gene in their body. They did not know how to muster offense in the 9th inning. They did not know how to handle adversity if it's smacked them across the face. The LA Dodgers had their backs against the wall, down 3-2 in this series. Went into Toronto, Game 3, Yamamoto, of course, is going to be brilliant. You get yourself set for Game 7. We see Toronto up early, but I told myself, just like any other rational baseball fan, this game is far from over. There's a lot that can be had here. It's going to be a seesaw, and between the dramatics of the defense as well as the chipping away with the solo bombs, that is ultimately what led the Dodgers not only to tying this ball game, but ultimately securing back-to-back World Series victories. And I'm here to tell every single Mets fan and their mother watching this live on a replay, and if you're a Blue Jays fan or a LA Dodger fan, I'm sorry to see you get as heartbroken as you were, or congratulations on your success. However, this is not going to be as much about just gassing up the Dodgers the entire show, as we're going to be combining this with our viewpoint as a Mets fan, because you cannot comfortably look at the offseason, the 2026 season ahead, and say to yourself, oh, surely the Mets are in great position for success. When you see the LA Dodgers continue to do what they're doing out of the National League, knowing that they're in the peak primes for many players' careers right now on that roster, knowing that they still have guys that maybe have yet to hit their complete peak, i.e. a Yoshinobu Yamamoto, because he's only in his mid-20s, mind you, how does that not have you fearful as a fan? And I think there is justified reasons as to why a multitude of fans feel that exact same way right here, right now. But what I am here to say, as a Mets fan, as someone who's covered them plenty, is that there are flaws in this Dodgers team just like any other team. But the way that the Dodgers combat their flaws is not only thanks to their amazing depth and their, of course, amazing experience that they have built over the years, thanks to these deep playoff runs, but it's by having just the absolutely gorgeous talent on their roster, head to toe, top to bottom, where your worst player is still in many cases some of your best for an opposing team. It's a Kike Hernandez who is your utility man at many times a non-factor throughout the course of a 162, yet is a massive X factor for you in postseason play. And it doesn't just stop with the Dodgers. You could even say the same here about the Toronto Blue Jays. They had a tremendous playoff run between their youth movement and Ernie Clement, Addison Barger, and everyone else in company, as well as the Grizzle veteran and Mad Max, of course, not showing up as a New York Met when we need him to against the Padres in Game 1 the wild card in 2022 when I was in attendance. But he steps up here in Game 7 for the Toronto Blue Jays and keeps them in it against these big bad LA Dodgers. We saw masterclasses on multiple fronts in this entire World Series, and it was not for a lack of effort by either team. The fact that we saw an 18-inning game in this World Series and the fact that the Blue Jays took them to extra innings in 7 is something that they should be proud of. At the same time, to lose in this fashion, to not secure a World Series victory in this fashion, not only stings harder than ever before as a Blue Jays fan, but also shows you just how different this Dodgers team is. They have the backs against the wall, and they didn't break a sweat. Even the 9th inning, when still down a run, which would have dictated them winning or losing this World Series. Again, the Dodgers are not only a great team, but they are the staple of how to go about regular season and postseason play. To not get too caught up in the regular season, while also knowing that you got to make sure you at least do enough to make sure you're staying afloat heading into postseason play. Something the Mets can surely learn from. Pair that with a rotation star-studded. You're an ace. You're an ace. You're an ace. And you're an ace. Everybody and their mother is an ace for this Dodgers team, right? And as much as Trey Savage proved to us in real time why David Stearns cannot sit on his hands like he did this past year with his fantastic rookie talent until it was too little too late to see what they have for you, because you may have your best pitching options in the farm before you even consider them at the major league level. Trey Savage had 3 starts in the major leagues before going on to dominate in the postseason this year, having one of the most dominant World Series outings ever, going 7 brilliant innings of 12 strikeout ball a couple days ago against these same Dodgers. He's making $57K on payroll. Shohei Ohtani makes that by taking a piss in the urinal for 5 minutes, and that really is not an exaggeration if I'm being honest with you. The fact of the matter is that the Mets can learn a lot from the Toronto Blue Jays, how they operate, how they did not care that, oh, Trey Savage only had a cup of coffee at the Bigs. We know he has the stuff. That is the kind of philosophy that David Stearns, who said himself and his end of season presser, how he can be more proactive with his in-season decision making rather. This is a prime example of exactly that. I'm not saying that the Mets have endless Trey Savages, but what I am here to say is that you can learn from this, because you saw the success of Nolan McLean, you saw the samples of success of Brandon Sproat, and you know that there's so much upside with Jonathan and beyond. I pray to God that David Stearns learns from this to a degree as we head into next year. And when we talk about the Mets pitching, we have an absolutely massive video dropping early tomorrow for each and every one of you to check out, because it has everything to do with what the Mets will be doing with their new pitching coach that'll be officially announced in the next, I'd say, 24, 48, 72 hour range. It's unofficially official. Very exciting news, but I'm going to expand more on that in content separate from tonight. So the Mets can learn plenty from a Blue Jays team that had a balance of the youth movement, key bullpen acquisitions that they made this past offseason, a rotation that they added at the trade deadline, brought in a Shane Bieber, who, yes, might not be an ace caliber starter for you, but was a game changer for them when they need to down the stretch heading into postseason play. It's the Grizzled veterans, and not just Max, but Seabass, 2 guys that absolutely folded under the pressure in Flushing, Queens, sadly. Of course, they're handling the pressure fine with Toronto. I digress. Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, they got some Bulldogs over there, and a perfect balance of an offense headlined by a George Springer, who the Mets did everything in their power to land, trying to sell him to, in fact, land with the Mets entering the 2021 season. He signs with the Toronto Blue Jays instead, and he gets this close to his first World Series moment as a Blue Jay, because we know he has one as his cheating scandal weighs there with the Houston Astros. Separate that and separate the Blue Jays and separate all the good that they did, because the Mets can learn play there. What we are here to talk about is how dominant the LA Dodgers continue to show, even when they're vulnerable, just how much of a different team they are from the average group. And if you are Steve Cohen, if you are David Stearns, how can you, by any stretch of imagination, rationally head into this year's offseason and think to yourself, oh yeah, let's play by the margins. Let's play by the numbers here. Let's just make some lateral moves and see how things are going to look with the youth movement entering next season. It's one thing to rely on some young players knowing they're going to blossom. It's another to expect them to blossom and to be here. And if they do not blossom, then you do not have a plan B, C, D, E, F, G option. And the Mets cannot fall in that category the way that they did this past calendar year. So tonight, it's not just on how the LA Dodgers mustered and fought back and had this resilience in more ways than one, had the defense exactly how you would like it to be exemplified, but the fact that this is a Dodger team that I've said so many times, and I will say it once more, they have had this working for the past decade to get to the point that they have got it. The Dodgers haven't just been good overnight. The Dodgers have been one of the best teams in the National League, if not Major League Baseball, for the past calendar decade. And in order for them to finally get over the hump of now being a team that's won back-to-back World Series, what did the Dodgers do that has deviated from their previous philosophy? That was not good enough when they had the peak primes of Clay and Kershaw, when they had the MVP and Cody Bellinger, when they had the Beard and Justin Turner, because I know they have the 2020 World Series, but come on, that's a Mickey Mouse ring in comparison to what they did the past 2 years, okay? A full 162 versus just 60 games are apples and oranges in my opinion. So what have the Dodgers done to separate themselves the past 2 years while they have still been consistently afloat as the best team, one can rightfully argue, in the National League West rather. Why am I saying Central? Dear God. And the point here is that what the Dodgers have done is spend a shit ton of money on premier talent and trade for controllable top ace caliber starting talent. Color me shocked. It's almost like when you have 5 ace caliber options in your rotation, you're destined to do well. Wow, who would have thought by signing a unicorn of a player on a $700 million contract would bode so well for you? I mean, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the formula here, but what it does take is for attention to be served and the likes of Steve Cohen and David Stearns actually learning from the playbook. Miss me with the nonsense that, oh, we have the Steve Cohen tax now. We're taxed north of 99% beyond every cent that we spend beyond $300 million. Okay. What have we learned? Even with the taxation, even with the big spending, Steve Cohen is still going to do everything in his power to make this team good. And what have we gotten in return? 3 out of the first 5 years under Steve Cohen have been losing seasons. And if we're being honest, it's really first 4 out of the 5 years because no one looks at 2022 and says, oh, what a great year with 100+ wins. Everyone and their mother says, look at the end of the season. Look at going 500 with the easiest strength of schedule in baseball in the month of August to September. Look at Marte's injury in Pittsburgh. Look at getting curb stomped in Atlanta for the division. Look at getting curb stomped at home against the Padres in the wild card. That is what we care about in 2022, okay? And the Dodgers throughout these years, throughout these stretches, they've had nothing but dominant, deep playoff runs. And this has not only been thanks to their in-house talent, but folks, look at this Dodger lineup. You want to know something? When you have an Ohtani, a Will Smith, a Freddie Freeman, a Mookie Betts, a Max Muncy, a Teoscar Hernandez, a Tommy Edman, an Andy Paez, a Kike Hernandez, a Miggy Rojas. When you look at that lineup and you see 1, you see 2, you see 3 batters out of the 9 are homegrown talents. When you look at the pitchers utilized today, Ohtani, Wrobleski, because I'm butchering the name, I'm sure. I apologize for the coughs, everybody. Glasnow, Sheehan, Snell, Yamamoto, almost all of them are not homegrown talents, okay? So if it hasn't been abundantly clear by now what the playbook is, let me dumb it down nice and simple for you, David. Steve, make sure you're listening. I'm sure you're paying attention somewhere. Spend the dollars like you have been, but spend them on the players that are warranted of it. This is why you went after Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Because if we had a Yamamoto, maybe the Mets would have gone past the Dodgers last year. We'll never know. Because that same Yamamoto helped the Dodgers get past our beloved New York Mets and the NLCS. When you look at how this roster has been constructed by the LA Dodgers with their heavy deferments that the Mets too can do themselves. Yes, you can kick and scream and cry all you want about how the Dodgers may manipulate the status of spending money on players right now, or you could counter knowing you are in the final year before the next big CBA negotiation. We are a year away from what's almost a true inevitable lockout. If you're Steve Cohen, how do you not go scorched shirt this offseason and put your foot down? Not only on big spending where it's warranted in the case of Alonso and Edwin Diaz at minimum returning, but the maximization of looking at the Kyle Schwarbers, the Munetaka Murakamis, the Yakamotos, the starters. You look at, of course, there's not too many out there that are overly sexy in the free agent market outside of guys like Framber Valdez, for example. However, at the trade market, do everything in your power to kick the tires and land a Tarek Skubal. And the Red Sox can land Crochet, you can land Skubal. You have the pieces to make it happen. Just go out and actually do it for a change. Stop being conservative. Conservatism, they always say, oh, the counter is by staying more conservative in the sphere of sports. Not talking politics, obviously, because that's a discussion for a different day. I'm here to tell you that when evaluating sports, to have that kind of mentality, they will say, oh, this is a great idea. It makes sense to be conservative. That way, we can have short and long-term success. That way, we don't completely deplete the farm. That way, we actually have a short and long-term goal. Well, here's the thing. The Dodgers are proving in real time that you can spend like a drunken sailor, yet not operate as one. What have the Mets done? They've spent like drunken sailors, and they've operated as one. They've spent stupidly on contracts under Steve Cohen. How many contracts under Steve Cohen do you like right now? Think about it. Since Steve Cohen has become owner, how many of those contracts are you actually happy have happened? Francisco Lindor being extended right before opening day, 2021. Sure, that's one of them. Juan Soto, long-term contract. Sure, we agree there, right? Brandon Nimmo, most would agree they don't love the long-term aspect of that contract. Edwin Diaz, sure, you can agree to that. It's been a success for the most part, no doubt. 3 players, one looking at big spending. Pete Alonso you brought back on the short-term contract. I'm aware of that. But the point here is that we have been still so far removed from competently being able to spend and allocate these dollars that the Mets have continued to shoot themselves in the foot that we are constantly behind the 8 ball because we have not had a proper structure in unison the way that the Dodgers, headlined by Freeman, formerly of the Rays, mind you, have been doing for years upon years on end. This is not one of those things that's built overnight. That's why Rome itself was not built overnight. But we see the playbook. We have the playbook right in front of us. All we need to do is put on the damn contacts and start reading instead of acting like a blind little schmuck and having no clue how to combat what is clearly right in front of us. We have to slay the dragon. In order to slay the dragon, you have to be bigger, you have to be badder, and you have to give less Fs than even the LA Dodgers. And this is where things get fascinating. Because when you look at this Dodgers team, when you look at their success, you look at how they built themselves, a lot of it is contingent on the fact that they landed not just any player, but a generational talent in Shohei Ohtani, who will constantly reel in both Japanese talent of great degree and MLB talent of great degree. Because who wouldn't want to play with Shohei Ohtani? That's why the Dodgers going all in on him and knowing that he had a West Coast bias was for certain something that was going to benefit them more than anyone else. That is just honestly luck of the draw. Their right place, right time. And now that they've reaped the benefits of landing the Yoshinobu Yamamotos, the Roki Sasaki's, potentially one of the other MPB stars I'll be posted this offseason, upcoming, they've been able to lean on that in ways that no other team really can. So bearing that in mind, what can the Mets control? What they can control is quite literally right in front of them. And what is right in front of them is a free agency pending of one Kyle Tucker, a free agency pending of one Alex Bregman, a free agency pending of one Bo Bichette, who just jaw-dropped us all in the World Series and gave a great argument as to why the Mets should consider the man as a second base option for them if they decide to trade away Jeff McNeil and maybe ponder the future of one Jet Williams. When you look at Kyle Schwarber, when you look at so many of the big bats in the free agent market, when you look at the key assets in the trade market, when evaluating starters, there are players available that can make this team so much better than what they were this past year. And I'm not saying solely in offense, because the Mets, in theory, were a good offensive team on paper. They're top 5, top 10, and basically every statistic. But the eye test will tell you they did not have life. They had no moxie. They had no it factor, and they certainly had no clutch gene. So numbers are numbers, but they're fickle until you have the difference makers. And that's where the Mets need to find the vibes, and they need to allocate these dollars significantly, okay? Steve Cohen has shown a willingness to spend more money than any other owner in baseball since becoming owner in the offseason of entering 2021. No one has spent more money on Scott Boras clients over that 5-year span than one Steve Cohen. Steve has $8 million upon millions of dollars without a problem for the betterment, or at least in his eyes, for the betterment of this New York Mets club. So why stop now? Why stop now after another failed year in what was supposed to be your 5th year out of 5 years where you're surely going to at least win one championship, according to Steve Cohen, the same Steve Cohen that going back to 2012 put in a bid for majority ownership of these same LA Dodgers. Yes, you heard that correctly. These same LA Dodgers. These Dodgers could have been owned by Steve Cohen a decade plus ago. Cohen did not win the bid. He deviated away from the Dodgers. He focused on his childhood favorite team, which was the Mets. And when he found the opportunity to buy them from the Wilt Bonds, he pounced. Apologies, everybody. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Steve has said verbatim since day one, the Dodgers are the future. The Dodgers are the way we are trying to be. But what have the Dodgers done so much better than the Mets has not only been recruitment to a degree, it's been consistency. It's actually knowing what the hell you're doing every single month. Even when you have your ruts. Because they're winners. They know what it takes to win. They know not to crash out and overly freak out if they have a bad month or two in the regular season because they're the mother effing LA Dodgers. When you have a team with that kind of moxie, with that kind of star power, with that kind of Hollywood look, without even knowing if they were a part of LA or not, they have everything running in their direction. They have multiple MVP players in their offense. They have multiple ace caliber starters in their rotation. They have a bullpen that was fickle throughout the year, but it simply did not matter when you can throw Roki Sasaki in there and just say, buddy, go and light them up. Okay? The Dodgers are showing you in real time what it takes to be champion, what it takes to be back-to-back champion, something that's so hard to do in today's game. There are fan bases out there that still have not experienced championships. Okay? And this Dodgers club has not been a club that, until 2020, they were winning every year. Far from it. The Dodgers, for an extended period of time, honestly, were a laughingstock in the National League West. Are we forgetting about this? Are we forgetting about the 10 to 15, 20 plus years straight of the Dodgers simply doing nothing while dominating the NL West every single year? I'm not forgetting it, and you shouldn't forget it either. Look at what they've had to do to finally get over that hump. David Stearns, Steve Cohen, pardon my French, kiddos. Put on your earmuffs. I'll give you a second. Wake the fuck up. It is time. Okay? And I would be saying the exact same thing if the Blue Jays won. Because if the Blue Jays won, I would be in more jaw drop as to that happening. And saying if the Jays can slay the effing dragon, what do you have to lose to go all in? What do you have to lose? And now here's the counter. Give me 1 second, everybody. Throat's ridiculous. I apologize. I realize I've been ranting for north of an hour, but I can't stop right now. It's driving me up an effing wall. How many times do we need to see the same thing happen over and over and over again until you say to yourself, oh shit, maybe what they're doing is working. Maybe, just maybe, I should have these kind of similar philosophies. And it has been for a lack of effort by Steve Cohen and the Mets hand in doing this. However, they have missed the mark so terribly over their first 5 years under Steve Cohen and trying to get themselves right that while behind the scenes a lot of things are working well, but listen, the Mets are not even going to get close to a meteoric rise of winning a championship within the next decade unless they absolutely break the barrier that is currently in front of them. And that barrier is a couple factors. Is the 90+% tax beyond the $300 million that you spend, thanks to the Steve Cohen tax, because there's nothing better than having schmuck owners that will make a rule where they will pocket the taxation of an owner who's actually spending for his team instead of just allocating it for yourself and for your own club. You know, God forbid, small market owners actually gave a rat's ass about their fan bases and their fans, but that's a tangent for another day. But you factor that in, you factor the lack of success the Mets have had to this point, and you say to yourself, what needs to be different? Okay? We need to spend more. We know this, but how much more? Do we need to spend $1.5 billion this offseason? Do we need to spend $1.7 billion this offseason? And the answer to this, my friends, I know this is frustrating to hear, no. It's not about just being the biggest spender in the offseason. It's about being the smartest spender in the offseason. It's about not giving a shit about what anyone else around you thinks, but you're focused on what you're doing. Even if that makes you look like the big, bad guy in the end. Even if that makes you look like you're building the new evil empire. Because you know what? Everyone wants the evil empire. Everyone wanted the evil empire back in the 80s with the Yankees. Everyone wanted the evil empire now with the LA Dodgers. It's not shocking that when you have consistent success, you build so many fan bases that learn to love to hate you, but that's because they envy you. We envy the Dodgers. Does any rational Mets fan really sit here to say, and oh my God, I want nothing to do with being the Dodgers. Why would I ever want to be something like the Dodgers? Stop fooling yourself, okay? Unless you love the idea of just living in mediocrity and never having your team actually win a championship, then okay, you can stay in that lane. But I'm not going to. I want to have the proactive way of thinking, which is I would like to see my teams win championships in the future. And the Mets have peak primes of Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, potentially Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz should they return. But what are you going to do with it? Because all you're going to do, Steve Cohen, all you're going to do, David Stearns, all you're going to do is waste these cores, talents, and timelines if you do not pony up the dollars when it is needed. if you do not say, you know what, maybe this guy doesn't make the most sense for the team, but fuck it. We're in a win now stage and we're going to go ahead and do it. Did anyone think the Dodgers needed Blake Snell after winning the World Series last year? Did anyone rationally think and say to themselves, oh yeah, the Dodgers need Roki Sasaki after winning the World Series last year? No! Not a single fan said that. And they still went out, and they still changed the narrative. They still made blockbuster moves, even after winning a championship, because that is what forward-thinking organizations do. They don't care about what they have done. They care about what they're going to do moving forward. And David Stearns is always on this high horse about focusing on the short and long-term future of the organization. Should that hold true, David? Show your worth this offseason, buddy. We love you. I really appreciate you. You need to win over a lot of the fans this offseason, understandably so. So much went wrong for you this past year. But this is how you learn. You learn from your mistakes. And you see what the Dodgers have done, and you say, we have to act in a similar manner. So that means you have to give some drunken sailor type contracts in the sense that they're going to look great for the first 3 years, but they're going to look god-awful for the final 3. You worry about that when you get there. You want to know why? You have the richest owner in baseball, okay? Richest owner in North American sports. If there's one man on the planet that I feel like might have an appetite, even though he won't love it, to eat millions of dollars on a contract for the sake of burning it down the road after you had success with that player, it's Steve Cohen. This is the same man who signed James effing McCann to $40+ million thanks to Sandy effing Alderson, that dumbass schmuck. Pardon my French, kiddos. And what do we see? You're eating the final years of the contract. Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. Max was this close to securing yet another World Series victory, and he was going to do it while the Mets paid to have him leave, okay? This is what's frustrating. It's that the Mets have spent these dollars, but they've spent them stupidly. They have not had the proper people in charge. And now that we finally have the man that's supposed to be our Prince Charming, the New York native, the man who grew up a diehard Mets fan, who's been wanting to be Mets president, great first year, horrendous second year. What can you do differently, David, to change the narrative in year 3? What you can do is to finally roll up the sleeves and say to yourself, oh my God, I have the richest owner in baseball to work with. I just found this out. It took me 2 years. Even after signing Juan Soto, it still took me 2 years because clearly Steve was a driving factor in the Soto negotiations over myself. But you know what? Fine. You know what, Steve? I will spend that extra $100 million that you gave me, even though I was just going to pocket it and do nothing with it. You know what, Steve? I'm going to go ahead and I am going to make that blockbuster trade because as much as I like some of our blue chip prospects in Jet Williams and Carson Wentz ain't going anywhere, so we're not even going to talk about him. Brandon Sproat, Jonathan, whoever the case may be, we need aces now, okay? We need to win now. That's the mentality that they need to have. And the fact that we are currently looking down the barrel of an offseason that'll be far from that unless they change the narrative is why I'm ranting each and every one of you today. So I realize that there's going to be a solid contingent of fans that come across this live show that are Blue Jays fans are like, what is this guy ranting about? Again, I cover the Mets for a living. We're going to talk about the World Series because it happened, but I have to pair this with the Mets in a way. And the easiest way for me to pair it is, this is the big bad Dodgers. This is a team that the Mets need to slay the dragon of in order to have success. And if the Mets are at all going to reach a championship in the next couple of years under Steve Cohen and David Stearns, they have to learn. Because the Dodgers are continuing to do things that no other team is doing. Every team can do deferments as drastic as they're doing. Could they fall flat on their face? Yes. What's also true is that outside of Roki Sasaki and Blake Snell down the stretch this year, the Dodgers had a failure of an offseason this past year. No doubt about it. They completely swung and missed on their bullpen. They went heavy after the big names from the year prior, which is something you typically should not do for relievers. We've learned this by now. It's not ideal to give relievers the big bucks unless it's guys that have a clear track record or guys that, just feel like a right fit for the organization. Otherwise, it's too fickle. It ain't worthy. They give Tanner Scott deferred payments, which is why Edwin Diaz would get another $100 million contract or close to, more than likely, because he's going to want to surpass the $70 million of Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott's an effing bum this year, a non-factor for this Dodger club come postseason play. Roki Sasaki's scared of his own shadow, and it still doesn't matter for this Dodger club. But the point is that the Dodgers, how they spend, how they allocate, isn't always going to work, but they have the depth to make up for it. Even when they have X, Y, and Z worth of injuries throughout the course of the year. The Dodgers have more pitching injuries than any other team in baseball. with the exception of the New York Mets this past year. The Mets, actually, as a matter of fact, had more injuries than anyone else on the face of the planet. And you want to know what's worse about that than anything else? The Mets had more injuries and utilized more pitchers than anyone when they literally didn't have more than one true ace in their rotation to start the season. And that one true ace was still a massive question mark as to what you were getting initially in Kodai Senga. Okay? That's the difference here. The Dodgers have no problem having everybody and their mother on the IL throughout the course of the year in the first half because they know they're going to be healthy in the second half. And they know that the guys that they have as placeholders are just as good as average rotations. The Dodgers B rotation is as good as the Mets A rotation. That tells you all you need to know. This is what separates good from greatness. And yes, the Dodgers do have the expertise. They do have the advantage of knowing that they are now back-to-back champions. So they're going to be able to sway free agents to go of lesser value on short-term contracts there for the sake of winning. It's going to continue to benefit them greatly when it comes to going after certain veteran players. It's going to benefit them greatly when going after top premier talent. But as I stated before, and I will relay this once more, everybody, we have one more season until the CBA's up. There is a reality that we face either a salary cap and or a floor. It's hard to envision the union allowing such a thing to get passed, and I don't foresee it to. I hope it doesn't. I hope before it happens, the cap can go F itself for obvious reasons. A floor needs to happen so these schmuck owners can spend and make the Dodgers not become the Dodgers. The Dodgers are who they are because Tyler Glasnow couldn't get paid from Pittsburgh, and he couldn't get paid from Tampa. Blake Snell could not get paid long-term elsewhere to his liking. Or I shouldn't even say that because he still could have. He wanted to go to LA to get his chip, and now he got it. So, in fairness, that isn't as valid. But the point stands. The way that the Dodgers operate is something that the Mets have to not only be studying, but they have to learn from as we move forward into this offseason. Because if they do not do this, we're going to be looking down the barrel of yet another year of the same type of mediocre highs and lows that every team goes through just for the LA Dodgers to come into town and take care of business like they have been doing. If you thought the Dodgers were a problem already, just wait until you realize how much bigger of a problem they're going to be when they are the heaviest suitor for Kyle Tucker. Think about how they're going to be the biggest problem imaginable when they get one of a Munetaka Murakami or Nakamoto signing there on a team-friendly contract because he wants to pair with his fellow brethren there and Yamamoto, Otani, Sasaki, Hai-Sung Kim, you name it. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. And the Mets have a window. And this window is right now. And it's not, the free agent class isn't the best. We're going to wait till next year. Miss me with that bullshit, pardon my French. It's about now. There's more than enough talent out there from the free agent market to the trade market to make a difference. But it's imperative that you don't sit on your hands and you have yourself an absolutely immaculate offseason, okay? I'm not saying you have to completely overturn the entire roster because that's not true. The Mets have pieces to work around and build with. That's great. But they actually have to go ahead and do it. They cannot allow another offseason of signing 20 French relievers when none of them are shut down guys. You can't have another offseason of pondering 3-4 different infield guys instead of your top prospects because, God forbid, you give them playing time. You can't have another year where you're expecting uncertainties to become a certainty in your rotation. You simply cannot do that and expect to have success. Because we watch live in real time. I covered daily for 4.5 effing months on this platform this year, a dog shit baseball team trying to tell you guys that it was something different when it clearly was what it was. Yes, injuries were a heavy factor, but the fact that the Mets had all those injuries to their rotation, when none of those guys get swing and miss the way that these Dodgers stars do, when none of these guys are ace caliber starters, the way that just one of the first 4 for LA is, that's what disgusts me, okay? If you're going to have top talent that's very feast or famine in the sense that they pump high velo constantly on the gun, but because of that, they're pushing closer to 100 innings in a year than 200, okay, use them sparingly when you need to, i.e. Tyler Glasnow, i.e. Blake Snell. The elite of the elite will make it work when they need to make it work because they're bulldogs. You don't need them throughout the whole course of the year, but you do need to have a proper backup plan should those guys go down. And for the Mets in 2025, not only did they not have a proper backup plan, and I realize that's been 40 minutes of me just ranting, so I apologize to everybody. Thank you so much for hitting that like and subscribe on your way, and I greatly appreciate that. I realize that this is a bit unorthodox and all over the place, but there's good reason for it today. We're reacting to the Dodgers winning the World Series, but ultimately how the Mets could learn from this, because the only way for the Mets to learn from this is to obviously actually say to themselves, oh wow, the Dodgers just won back-to-back World Series. We don't want to see that happen again. And in order for that not to happen again, why don't you go ahead and actually do something about it, okay? And in order for the Mets to do something about it, they have to go back and do the things I've been relaying each and every one of you. But going back to the top here, the way that the Dodgers are constructed, from their rotation to their bullpen to their infield to their outfield, you really cannot fault them as to how they're having the success that they continue to have. It makes too much sense as to why they've had the success that they've had. And yes, you could say, oh, bad luck this, or they had umps on their side that. Shut up. They won the World Series. It doesn't matter now. They are kings. Yet again. For back-to-back years. Are you happy about that, Mets fans? I know you're not. Is anyone in baseball that isn't a Dodger fan happy about this? I mean, maybe Yankee fans, because God forbid if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got a World Series before Aaron Judge, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is that we all don't want to see this continue, all right? And this Dodger dynasty, this dragon needs to be slayed. And it will not be slayed for at minimum another calendar year now. So how can David Stearns and Steve Cohen separate themselves? It's by actually giving a you-know-what, for one. And two, going out there and doing things you have not done before. Getting out of your comfort zone. Stop the notion of, oh, I don't want to add a big slugger for my DH because I'd rather have positional diversity there. I would love the idea of having multiple options I could rotate throughout the week, even though they're all Joe Schmoes and banging around 750 on the OPS, instead of bringing in one guy that can give me north of 50 home runs a year in that position. No. That's where we need to stop. You have to look at a rotation and say to yourself, oh, but we have such a deep farm. Oh, I love these prospects. Oh, they're going to blossom. Sure, they'll blossom. But let them blossom somewhere else, buddy. We don't have any more time to waste, okay? Mets haven't won a championship since '86. It's been a hot minute. I think we can bite the bullet by allowing prospects to blossom elsewhere, especially when the Mets are finally in a position where they have a very smart president when it comes to drafting. David Stearns has been on the money in his first 2 years drafting for the Mets. The Carson Bench pick is still one I love, and hilariously enough, the pick right after him was Trey Savage for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I'm not complaining, because I really do believe Carson Bench will be the center fielder for the Mets throughout a good chunk of next season. I will stand on that firm, barring changes. And I love the Mets player development, headlined by Chris Gross, formerly the Houston Astros, who's the Mets VP of scouting in that area now. I love everything about it. But Rome wasn't built overnight, right? These things take a couple years. Well, the Mets need to speed up the process, all right? We don't need Rome, but we need something, okay? We need a littler version of Rome, okay? We need, like how people say, oh, there's a Statue of Liberty, and then there's a mini Statue of Liberty. We at least need something here, okay? Even if it's not the full thing, we need something to show that we're actually going in the right direction instead of moving laterally. Because all I see right now, truthfully and transparently, Mets fans, as a Mets core that is both youth-filled and veteran-filled, but the veterans that you spent the big dollars on, are they going to be able to move the needle for you enough? I don't think that they can with this current core. I think more needs to be added. I think not only an Alonso reunion is imperative, but if you don't bring Alonso back for some odd reason, you need to make sure that you properly replace and replenish his power. You have to. The same way that you have to shore up a bullpen that has no one under contract as of now entering next season. The same way that you have to look at a rotation and say, you know what? Not only should we target an ace, but we need multiple aces. Because I don't care that the Mets have eight starters under contract next season. Who gives a rat's ass about the players the Mets have under contract next year? And those are the same players that we've had from this past year. You want to know why? What did the Mets do this past year? Nothing. What, you think Sean Manaea's going to be your Cy Young? He's going to be your stopper next year? I'll believe it when I see it. Oh, what, you think Clay Holmes is going to give you consistently 7 innings? Yeah, okay, sure, buddy. Oh, Kodai Senga is going to give us 200 innings. Do we just enjoy lying to ourselves? What is it going to be? Because what I have seen as a Mets fan, not only under Steve Cohen, but this goes back to the Wilpons, is a continuation the same year after year after year. It's you get excited, you make some big offseason splashes, some that you're maybe a little too excited for, but you're still excited about them. You go ahead and you make these moves happen, and then bam, first week of spring training, your ace starter's down with injury, right? Bam, another key player's down with injury. Gonna start the year on the shelf. We'll be back a month and a half in. It's every single year this team has their top players down. And normally I wouldn't care when it's just the start of the year. But when the start of the year impacts the entire year, the way that it most certainly did for the Mets this year, it's hard to overlook it. So, as my continued cry to David Stearns and Steve Cohen, please look at what's right in front of you. Steve, stay true to your words as someone who wants to be the East Coast Dodgers. Actually take a page out of the playbook. Actually say to yourself, you know what? Time is time. I'm going to stop giving a shit about certain things that I gave a shit about before. I'm just going to go out and do, okay? I'm going to go out and spend. I'm going to spend big for the areas that this team needs it for. And we'll worry about the repercussions down the road when we have to worry about them. I will make big trades, David Stearns. Talking about you, David. Speaking as if you're talking to yourself. Look in the mirror, pointing at yourself. You, David Stearns, you're going to make big moves. And you're going to make big moves because you have no other effing choice. You have the best farm imaginable to do it. You have the best pitching farm. All baseball. Per MLB.com. There's not a better time than right now to dip into the farm and make trades of significance. Should this Mets team not be able to muster either of those things, or comes up unbelievably short on one or the other, rest assured we'll be here right away to rant about it, talk about it, and say, up, another year of mediocrity, because that is what we're going to get in Mets land, unless they get their head out of their ass. And I'm usually not this blunt unless the Mets have their losing ways like they did in my post-game shows throughout the majority of the year, and I was really blunt in a lot of them because it was really hard not to hold back with how incompetent this team was. But as someone who not only is a fan of them, but covers them nightly, I, too, do not want to see a future of a 2026 New York Mets of the same shit that we just, you know what, let's just move this way, let's just adjust this that way, and let's just have this look all nice and good, and even though it's the same steaming pile of dog shit, you know what, we sprayed a little Febreze on top of it, so it's okay. Can we please, for the love of God, for the love of all that is holy, finally learn with what is right in front of us? It really isn't that hard. The only thing that I would give credit where credit's due, the Mets do not have control over as much as we would like to, is the Japanese market with these players and Shohei Ohtani itself. That Ohtani factor will be a difference maker. And that is something that the Mets don't just have immediately available for them in the market as much as we would love it, okay? There's a lot of great talents. I'm not saying Ohtani is every single day the best player on the planet, but he is a unicorn for a reason. This Dodger team without Ohtani, where would they have been in this playoff run? Seriously, what a magician he was in more ways than one. So, Ohtani aside, the Mets have to do everything in their power to get themselves right. So, before I get to your donations, because I see a couple of them, and thank you guys so much for that. I greatly appreciate that. Continue to hit that like and subscribe on as you guys are first chiming in. It really does mean a lot, everybody, as we're breaking down the latest in Mets land. As yes, the LA Dodgers have officially won their second World Series in as many years, and their third World Series in the 2020 era, and their second out of the three that's a legit World Series, because 2020 shortened season versus back-to-back full seasons, that's a massive difference in my opinion. But what is next now for the Mets this offseason, you may ponder? Well, it's a couple things. One, the Mets will be officially announcing their pitching coach hire in the next couple days, if not as soon as tomorrow, and we will have a video dropping early on the platform tomorrow. Everything that you need to know about this coach. The only reason why we're not talking about it now is I don't want to get it lost in the sauce, and that sauce is the initial reaction of the Dodgers winning the World Series right now. I want to separate these conversations. Separately, outside of that hire that's inevitably happening for the Mets, which I'm really, really excited about, and I'll expand more on that shortly, you have the deadlines for qualifying offer and tender and non-tender players. For qualifying offers, players will have up until November 18th to accept their QO or decline. Meaning, Edwin Diaz, who will inevitably get the QO, will likely decline it by November 18th. That's big plus for the Mets, though, in trying to keep him because, let's be honest, it's tough to spend big bucks on a reliever as is, but even as a contending team, are you really inclined to spend the big dollars on Edwin Diaz when you have to give up draft pick compensation? You're less inclined. So the Mets will be able to benefit with that market the way that they did with Alonso last year by throwing the qualifying offer on him. Now, because the Mets threw a qualifying offer on Alonso a year ago, they cannot this year, which is why his market is going to be far deeper, and in my opinion, a much greater question mark as to if he will actually return to the Mets or not. Because there will be more teams, there will be more suitors to a degree versus what we saw a year ago, where every single domino fell one by one of first base and DH options needed, and they were off the board. That is on the 18th for qualifying offers. For tenders and non-tenders, the deadline for that, if I'm not mistaken, is November 21st. So be on the lookout for that, because you're going to see some really interesting non-tender contract candidates for the New York Mets, including Tyler McGill, who will be rehabbing this entire next calendar year due to his surgery. So the Mets are going to have some really interesting decisions that they're going to be making for their roster in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So be on the lookout for it. Now that we're officially in the month of November, October has come and went. It was a drag of a month, everybody. That was the least that I posted in a month all year long. I'm not even joking. That was only because there just weren't enough things to talk about. No, I can only talk about the same thing over and over again so much until it gets so stale that no one wants to even have the discussion on, and that's regarding certain rumors among other things. So there will be a lot of that as we get into this offseason now, and when it comes to news, trades, hires, signings, everything in Mets land under the sun, we will cover to a T on the platform as we do each and every in-season and off-season long. Now, those are the immediate things upcoming for the New York Mets. So what is the big thing that you should be focused on as a Mets fan moving forward? Focus on the following. Do not be surprised when David Stearns makes signings in the next couple of weeks of relievers you never heard of. I don't even say that as a joke. I just say that factually because he's done that. He'll continue to do that because that's how he is when it comes to adding depth. He's just going to do it, okay? So be prepared for that. Secondly, also be prepared for the further hirings. Once the pitching coach is settled, the Mets will then have third base to figure out. They will have the catcher, not catcher, I'm sorry. They will have the bullpen coach that they will need to add as well. They may add assistant pitching coach with pitching coach too, because Desi Drewski went back to the Yankees, and a couple other areas. First base coach, because Antoine Richardson is parting ways, which pisses me off to no end. But as we saw from recent reporting, the Mets did supposedly everything in their power to bring Antoine back, and he's parting ways with the Mets after having a career coaching year and will probably get a nice bag and a larger role elsewhere. That's what I imagine, because it did not appear the Mets heavily considered Antoine Richardson for a role beyond first base coach. I am wondering if he is going to say accept, I don't know, a bench job somewhere else, possibly. It would be a slap in the face to the Mets, to say the least, if he takes a lateral move of a first base coach hire elsewhere. But those moves will be happening in the next week to 2 weeks. So make sure you're looking out on that. Focus in on the early, simple signings the Mets do. Some intriguing signings that Stearns may do. Maybe some guys overseas they never heard of as well. They're coming from the KBO that have some experience. Not that we're going to focus on solely bargain bin. I'm just saying there's the calm before the storm. This is the calm. The storm will be as we get deeper into November, as we get to those deadlines, as I mentioned, on the 18th and the 21st for the qualifying offer, as well as the tender and non-tenders. And then once we reach December, once we get into the second week of December, winter meetings happens. If you guys don't know what happened in winter meetings a year ago, the Mets signed a player by the name of Juan Soto. Not sure if you heard of him. Things get very spicy, usually right around, again, mid to late November, entering December. Things get hot on the stove. And when things get hot on the stove, not only do we do live shows here basically nightly, like we do throughout the regular season, but we pump out a lot of video content as well. So for those who have maybe been missing the Wardy content, Wardy, where have the live streams been? It's been weeks, and I don't blame you. I've been missing them, and I've been missing you guys just as much. I promise. That has been true. Dad life has been hectic, transparently, outside of doing this and covering the Mets for a living and work. I'll be completely honest by saying that trying to juggle that with me and my ladies' schedules is easier said than done. But thankfully, this offseason has allowed a time period to give me more of a sense of structure and to figure things out how we'll be moving forward this offseason. So I'm looking forward to getting out this daily content for you guys. So make sure you guys are not missing any single part of it, from the inevitable live streams to the videos to everything in the Mets news and rumor front. You will absolutely get tired of some of my rumor news content, because naturally when I talk about players multiple times and they did not officially land with the Mets yet, you're going to be fed up and you're going to say to yourself, Wardy, why are we still talking about this? My counter is, I'm always going to talk about every report and every rumor, even if it's kind of redundant at times. I just may not talk too much more on it if we already repeated it a million times on the platform, but it will be discussed nonetheless, as we do with every single report and rumor of significance in Mets land every offseason. And whether you love it or hate it, Steve Cohen's going into an offseason absolutely scorched earth when it comes to being pissed off with how this year's went, especially you see the Dodgers win a championship in the end again as well. So when I tell you that there's a great reality that we're going to be just seeing a lot of things, a lot of moving parts happen this offseason, I don't say that as someone who is assuming it. I'm saying it as someone who's fully expecting it. And you should fall in that category as well. It's going to be a very spicy offseason. And I truly do believe that this offseason is going to be spicy in ways that we aren't thinking of right now, that are different from the standard of, oh, let's trade for a good starter. Oh, let's sign Alonso Diaz back. Oh, let's add this guy, as a veteran, yada, yada, yada. They're going to be doing things that are simply different than what they have done prior. Otherwise, don't expect the Mets to win championships because let's face it, I shouldn't say nothing. That's not true. They have not done nearly enough to position themselves, to put themselves in that spot to do that next season, barring changes. So with that being said, everybody, let's get into some of these comments quick because I know we got a lot of them. We're at just about 100 likes in the live show. Thank you guys kindly for that. Continue smashing that like and subscribe on as you guys first chime in. Please let me know all your thoughts and reactions here to everybody watching live at a replay. And again, thank you guys kindly for being in here. I really do appreciate it. But now, folks, let me get on to your comments in regards to these donations, whatever else you have in Mets land for yours truly. And let's get to the following. All right, going back to the top. Amazing series, really too bad someone had to lose, said Steve earlier. Yeah, I know, Steve. It was a shame. I really was gutted to see the Blue Jays lose this series, obviously. I was pulling for them hard, just as any other fan that isn't a Dodger fan, obviously. Wasn't for a lack of effort on their end, to say the least, but Blue Jays literally gave every single thing they had, and the Dodgers, who did not look like that they were at their best, still got it done in the most clutch ways imaginable. How can you not be envious in the way that the Dodgers are and how they operate? You're fooling yourself if you're not, truthfully. JV with the donations. Thank you so much. We don't need Yamamoto. We have our Japanese ace, Kodai Senga. Yeah, the Japanese ace, Kodai Senga, that couldn't even get beyond 4 innings in Lehigh Valley against the Iron Pigs that I was in attendance of this September. Yeah, buddy. Thanks for the humor and for the joke. I appreciate the donation. Yoshima, member 56 months. Do whatever you can to win next year. Balls to the wall. No guarantee after 2026 you can do the same. Exactly. There's a world where Steve Cohen can't even act drunken sailor after next season with the uncertainty with the CBA. So what do? Might as well. You know what? I understand Sandy Alderson said in his first year running ship for the Mets was Zach Scott Howard. Not going to act like drunken sailors, but miss me with the bullshit. You know what drunken sailors have done for the LA Dodgers the past 2 years? When them sailors, specifically Pirates, something that they appreciate. And that's championship gold, damn it. Go out and spend. Just don't spend on schmucks like James McCann, expecting him to be something that he's not. Don't spend on schmucks like Starling Marte and think he's going to have legs after his age 33, 34 season already. Don't spend on the guys that clearly have more risk than reward. Spend on the ones that are certainties, will continue to be certainties, and potentially have a higher upside than what we have seen at this point. And there are plenty of players out there that the Mets can go out and spend on. There are plenty of players out there the Mets can go out and trade for. Are all of them going to be needle movers as much as the other? No. But the bar is unbelievably low in Mets land right now. How about we just get someone who knows how to move a damn needle at all, huh? Let's start there. Billy Dottie with a $5 holla. I feel gutted for Blue Jays fans. Dodgers have showed the Mets they need to go scorch earth for the right players. Just unreal. Damn it is right, my guy. We got, God hates the Mets, $5 holla. I know they lost, but the fact that Scherzer and Bassett pitched 5 innings in Game 7 not for us after Cohen spent money on them shows how pathetic we are. It's not just on how pathetic we are, but equally it's how pathetic they were. I'm sorry. I loved Chris Bassett during the regular season for the Mets in 2022, but Buddy rolled over and died in postseason play. I don't want to hear it, okay? Seabass was nice. I wouldn't hate him returning as a back-end option, even though he's pushing 40 now. But let's call it how it is. Max Scherzer got shelled in his biggest moment as a New York Met, and he will always be known as that than anything else. We don't give a shit about him having just over a 2 ERA that year. oblique injury and all. What we care about is being batting practice to Josh Bell, Jurickson Profar, Manny Machado, and Trent effing Grisham for the San Diego Padres. So shut up. Chris Bassett, the Hound, Seabass. Where was he in that wild card? There was only one starter that actually had competence in that series. And that one starter was the reason why the Mets had one win in that wild card matchup, and that was one Jacob deGrom. And Jacob deGrom just pitched the most innings this past year that he has pitched since the 2010s. So there's that. Mad Team Parents, member of 6 months. Stearns needs to rethink pitching staff strategy. He absolutely does to a degree, but I think he's been doing that. And the man who the Mets are hiring as their new pitching coach is going to help them in that exact direction. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. I'm recording it as soon as we're done with this live stream tonight, but it'll drop early tomorrow for you guys. So be on the lookout for it. Probably, maybe at 8 a.m. drop. It'll be 8 or 9 a.m. drop. We'll see. It'll be early, though, because I want it out early. I think everyone's going to be locked in to want to watch baseball content again now that the offseason is officially upon us. Trading for Skubal and signing either Peralta or Valdez and making them making their top two with McClain, Holmes, and Pearson be in the fifth to the start. Yeah, I don't hate that, Mad Team. And that's assuming that you don't trade Peterson, because I do think that there's potential that he's dealt this offseason. Cameron Kier, $5 holla. Thank you so much, my guy. He says, as a Rangers fan who started following them in the early 2010s, I can relate to the Blue Jays fans Yeah. I'm a New York Rangers fan as well, if that's what you're referencing. We know very well what it's like to get close to championships and falter like this. Two teams of LA, i.e. the Kings. We know that too well. And it's actually fitting that we bring up the Rangers here because there is that connection. Because when the New York Rangers lost the Stanley Cup Finals to the LA Kings in 5 games back in 2014, 2015 area, what was the main X factor as to why the New York Rangers did not get over the hump that year? It wasn't Henrik Lundqvist's fault. It was a lack of experience for a Rangers squad versus an LA Kings team that 2 years prior curb stomped Marty Brodeur and the New Jersey Devils for the Stanley Cup. So it's experience when you look at the Kansas City Royals curb stomping the New York Mets at 5 games in the 2015 World Series. Do you guys see the trend here? Experience. Having these deep playoff runs and having championship success, getting that taste. Once you get that taste, there's no way you don't want to go back to it. And for the Dodgers, knowing that they understand exactly how to get to gold is exactly why they will continue to be a force to be reckoned with. They've figured out the formula. They've cracked the code, so to speak. Michael Conforto is the 2025 World Series champ. That is the one bright side today. Shout out to my GOAT Conforto. Didn't get any playing time in this playoff run. It did not matter. My GOAT. Happy. So happy he gets a World Series. That's actually pretty sick. I'm happy for Michael. He got very unfortunate circumstances with him. He was offered like a 7-year extension at one point by the Mets. He said no thank you. Had a season-long shoulder injury right as he was, in his free agent market year after the 2021 season, which derailed everything for him. And, he'll be more that kind of part-time player on very good teams moving forward for probably the rest of his career. But I am happy Conforto got that championship. He was my favorite player on the New York Mets. No, he was not our best player, but you don't need to be the best player to be my favorite player, and he was that. Remember when Soto said Marte was the captain? Yeah, I do. And it was funny then, but I think I understand why he said it, just in the sense of how he views him as kind of his unk, if you will, as a guy that he really respects and believes that the Mets respect as well. But Starling Marte will not be a New York Met next year. There's no justified reasons to roster him. I'm sorry. Unless you do it solely for vibes, because you feel like you're going to hurt the vibes more next season if you let him walk. Then that's a different discussion, because if we've learned one thing this past year, you need vibes in order to have success. Has there any news on Canning? Nope, and I doubt we'll hear anything on Canning for a while. Should the Mets throw a contract at him again or not, we'll see. Rangers wasting Igor like they did. Don't get me started. The Rangers are an absolute joke. The Rangers had a rebuild that started in 2017, and they did everything in their power to ruin it because they tried rushing a rebuild because they're in the big New York market. James Dolan is a schmuck, and Guys, little you know what's in a twist after Jeff Gordon and why am I blanking so bad right now? And I know why am I blanking? And our president at the time, John Davidson, we gave up on that a couple years in. And the Rangers completely missed the mark on their player development. They did not know how to develop top draft picks, and they also had poor draft picks. Between Elias Anderson to Filipino, who unfortunately is a very good player, just too injury prone, to Vitaly Kravtsov, to even now Alexis Lafreniere, who'll continue to be in that category, Capo Caco. What do all those players have in common for my New York Ranger fans out there? They're top draft picks that the Rangers completely missed the mark on properly developing. I'm so numb with the New York Rangers that when Mike Sullivan got hired, I actually laughed because I'm like, oh, only 5 years too late. I'm glad we have him now. Awesome. With a completely broken roster that is not going to go anywhere under Chris Drury. Chris Drury doesn't know his hand from his ass. And this is coming from someone who was a very heavy Chris Drury advocate when he first came in the wings as a factor in the New York Ranger front office before he took over for Jeff Gordon. But that's me getting on my Rangers tangent. It's late night here on the East Coast, almost 1:30 a.m. You're going to get something if you're going to ask. In real time, I want to use Savage over Benj. I mean, that's okay. But at the same time, like, Trey Savage looked great. But are we going to lose sleep over Trey Savage when the Mets finally have an outfield prospect that looks like he could be of greater upside than Jared Kelenic ever would be, and potentially higher upside than PCA when evaluating how well-rounded of a player he's expected to be? I'm pretty happy about that. I'm really happy about that. And I'm not going to allow a Trey Savage breakout in this year's playoffs hinder my viewpoint on Carson Bench. Oh, it's really 12:26. Oh, we moved the clocks, didn't we? Wait, are we gaining an hour or losing an hour tonight, guys? Can someone enlighten me? Are we gaining or losing an hour? I feel like we lost an hour, no? No, we didn't lose an hour. I'm going crazy. Billy Dottie with a gaining an hour. Thank you. I hate the daylight savings shit so much. I'm very pro. Let's just not do that. Let's just have the same time all year round. Shocker. It's almost like other countries do it for a reason. Billy Dottie with a $5 holla says, what influence you think Cohen, let's see. What influence you think Cohen will have on Stearns after seeing what we just saw? From starting pitching to a balanced lineup from top to bottom. Again, Billy, it goes back to everything I was relaying for the past hour, man. You have to look on the way the Dodgers spend, on their heavy deferrals, on their structure to bring in aces on trade, even when they're going in their walk year, cough, cough, terp, schoolball. And you have to not be afraid to take that risk because the reward will outweigh that risk. David Stearns is not in Milwaukee anymore. He cannot operate this team as if that is the case. Nor can Steve Cohen look at David and say, hey, just play this by the margins. You have to go all in. We are closer to Francisco Lindor being traded in 2 years after he's hit his peak prime of his career so he can go win somewhere else than we are succeeding with him. Yes, you have Juan Soto, and yes, Juan is entering just his age 27 season or so. But the rest of your core isn't that young for who's established right now and who's expected to be here. Nimmo's already in his 30s. Lindor isn't getting any younger. It is absolutely prime time to win now. And I don't just say that as a starved fan who desperately wants to see success for their team. I see that because it's common sense. These windows are not going to last as long as you think they will. And if you decide to sit on your hands and then finally get yourself well-rounded, well, shit, that will mean nothing if we're already in a retool/rebuild process on that point. You can't do that. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm absolutely fed up with the idea of just being above 500 every year. I'm not a Mike Tomlin guy, the way that everyone raised over Mike Tomlin. What I care about is the lack of clutchness Mike Tomlin has had as head coach for the Steelers, and that has been apparent every single year when it comes to postseason play. When the Steelers won the Super Bowl against the Arizona Cardinals, that was James Harrison, Big Ben, Santonio Holmes calling game. It was not Tomlin's team. It was year one after Bill Cowher left. What I know as a Steelers fan is Tim Tebow hitting up Demaryius Thomas on a slam pass and taking the house 90 yards because Ike Taylor's slow as shit. May you rest in power, Demaryius. I see a Blake Bortles and a Jaguars team win in the wild card because the Steelers decided to go for an onside kick with 2+ minutes left when you still had Ben effing Roethlisberger, the best quarterback in the NFL at the time, in the final 2 minutes of the game to actually rally back for a comeback. No one did it at a greater rate than he did statistically, and yet we couldn't even put the ball in his hands. So, as someone who can explain from their other fandoms, I have seen my favorite team's core wasted. I saw Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, the Killer Bees, the best offense in all the NFL, wasted because you couldn't invest in a proper secondary. Wasted because you couldn't invest in a proper OC. Wasted because you could not properly balance your effing roster because you were too damn old school and conservative. This is why I'm fed up with this shit. Because I've seen this my entire livelihood as a sports fan with all my sectors of fandom. I've never seen a championship as a sports fan, as a diehard fan for any of my teams. I've seen a championship for my Duke Blue Devils in basketball, but I'm a very casual college basketball fan. I'm not going to say that I'm not, because I am. So I can't appreciate that the way that I will literally drop here crying and screaming should the Mets win a World Series. Losing my mind if the Steelers win a Super Bowl anytime soon. Jaw dropped if the Rangers somehow, somebody do anything of competence when going over my specific fandom of teams. The point stands. I think I'm just a prime example of how many of you fans feel. You know what it's like to see multiple core groups of your favorite teams never win a championship. Like the 2006 Mets. Great example. Fantastic example. The 2006 Mets. Many believe to this day would still have won that World Series if they got there. But we'll never know. Why? Because the Mets never got there. Players' primes can be gone in a snap of a finger. All it takes is injuries, David Wright, and all it takes is inconsistencies to not be the player that you once were. And the Mets do have a foundation. They do have a brilliant farm. They have so much great young upside in their rotation. All they need to do is maximize what they have to their advantage. Take advantage of your assets. Take advantage of being the richest effing owner in North American sports with baseball. Steve came out guns a-blazing as an owner. Do it again. But you're 5 years in now, Steve. You have a smarter mind in this front office. I know you guys may counter that, given David's lack of success this past year. But let's call it how it is. I'm still taking David Stearns every day of the week over a Billy Epler and over a Zach Scott. David is a very, very smart and sharp mind. But he has been ultra-conservative to the detriment of this club. That cannot continue. Nor can Steve Cohen allow it to continue. So I'm not expecting it to continue unless it does. And if it does, then it will crash down. We'll talk about it as we typically do. Blue Jays loss is trending. Of course it's trending. They just lost the World Series, and one of the best World Series we've seen in a while. Rip, thank you so much for the membership. I appreciate that. Really, really do. Thank you to everyone who became members today. Really appreciate you guys. Be on the lookout, folks, because we will have our next member-only live show in the month of November, so make sure you guys are looking on it. William, I'm allowed to diversify. Thank you, though. I appreciate the input. Let's see. Toronto Game 7 curse is legit. It is. It is. But listen, Toronto did win a championship with Kawhi. It's not like they can't do it. They're just very fickle in doing so. Very few and far in between. Why did Crochet sign an extension with the Sox? And what he signed an extension with the Sox because the Sox gave him guaranteed money. He was coming off of like his first full true year as a starter when he's already dealt with ailment to a degree. And he was very comfortable in Boston. I'm so glad that you brought up Garrett Crochet. You want to know why I'm so glad you brought up Garrett Crochet? Because the man that we're going to be breaking down the platform tomorrow, that'll be hired as the Mets' new pitching coach, is a man who was a direct factor behind Garrett Crochet being acquired and Garrett Crochet, to a degree, having the success that he had this past season, along with the tremendous success that Boston had in their farm when looking at pitching. You know how the Mets were awesome this year in pitching in the minor leagues? Like, tremendous. Really good. Terrible at the major league level, but amazing in the minor leagues? Well, the Red Sox, look no further. They were the exact same, but they actually had a rotation that stayed afloat and was damn good throughout the course of the year. And the man who's been leading the charge in Boston is going to be leading the charge for the New York Mets. But I will leave it at that. I will expand more on that for each and every one of you, and content dropping early tomorrow. You've been watching sports for over 45 years, Thunder, and how many championships have you witnessed in that process? Probably not a lot, unless you prove me wrong here and you say you're a Patriots fan or something. You've watched sports for 45 years and you have yet to witness a championship. This is my point. 0. Look at all these. Look at all of you sorry SOBs that have not witnessed a championship either. We're in the same boat. We all want the same thing. We just want a little taste of success. We don't know what it's like. Mets fans since 1990 with nothing to show. Exactly. 29 years, no titles. Yeah, it's despicable. It's disgusting is what it is. And it's one thing to be disgusted by this, and this was a small market ran team and Bumble F USA that no one cares about. No, it's New York effing New York. And you can't win? We expect this with the Jets. We have expected this with the Mets, but we should not expect this with the Mets anymore, yet we continue to. So my closing remarks, everybody, as someone who greatly appreciates every single one of you chiming in live on a replay tonight for our World Series reaction, as well as what's next for the Mets now this offseason, for immediate things that will happen, what they can learn from the Dodgers. And folks, the final thing that I have to say to each and every one of you is buckle the hell up, okay? I'm not only saying this to put it out into existence, I'm saying it because it's a fact. The Mets have to lock in this offseason. They have to look at what the Dodgers did and say, that can't happen again. Not without them having a valiant fight by getting in the way. The Mets didn't even get a chance to get in the way because they couldn't even make postseason play. It's frustrating. The only good thing I can say, everybody, is that the year is finally over. Baseball-wise, the offseason is officially upon us. And if there's one good thing about the offseason, knowing us Mets fans don't understand success all that well because we haven't seen it much, is that there's a good, if not great, reality that we will have an opportunity this offseason to have highs of adrenaline and success thanks to big signings and trades so significant that those highs may outweigh anything that happens next year. I know that's a depressing thought to hear initially, but for the sake of just wanting some form of entertainment, some form of excitement, some form of optimism for a period of time, I do believe we'll be getting that. It's just a matter of we'll be getting it, but will that hold true and stay consistent throughout the course of the year in 2026? Those are two completely different things. I almost knocked over my bottles beside me. That is time for me to go. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe on your way in and on your way out. Our first live stream in a couple weeks on the platform. So thank you guys for chiming in live at a replay. Like I said, I know I was a little hot-headed. I know I was a little all over the place, but I had to let it rip because I was expecting to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays winning the World Series tonight. Instead, it's deja vu and the same thing in back-to-back years. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this, everybody. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out.